Hi, and greetings. I'm here to present you today my game called Trinity. I made most of the games by myself using the Unreal Engine 4. While I had some help from 2 former classmates and 3 former school teachers for the game design, I made all the level design, all the visual art, and all the programming using the blueprint system from the Unreal Engine. That being said, everything which is sound related, which include the VFX and the music, are made from a sound designer called Nicolas VL. What I'm presenting you today is a demo level. It is not part of the actual games, and it is the reason why there are so many game mechanics introduced into a single level. It could be problematic for full games. In a matter of fact, in the actual games, all the game mechanics are introduced throughout different levels, but it is very effective to show and explain my game design. So, without further ado, let's start the games. The game is starting right now. As you can see, it is very simple so far. There are walls all around you, and there's a block in front of you. And all you have to do is jump on top of the blocks and continue your progress. I'm aware this is not a very explosive way to start the games. I mean, most of the time there is like a narrative introduction and there is a scripted sequence to introduce your game mechanics. But since my game is very simple and without any stories, I decided to go to a simple route just to introduce and get used the player to his basic movement. Okay, now the player has to go to this kind of blue orb to acquire his first power. This way, the player knows there is logic behind his power acquisition, even though it's not very well explained in a narrative standpoint. And this brings me to the second point. Why do I give the ability to the player in a gradual manner? Well, it is a pretty common technique and it is meant to limit the possibilities to the players so that he can learn better. It's not really groundbreaking or anything. For instance, Portal does something similar, but it is still something very effective, and I thought it was the best option for this case. You acquire your first power. As you can see, the game does not exactly tell you what to do or how it works. There is a graph on the wall telling you it has to do with the left click, but that's it. Normally in the game, you have to be clear and precise about how mechanics work and what the player has to do. But in this case, because it is a puzzle game, I wanted the player to think for himself, to explore, to be curious about it. So in this sense, learning the game is a puzzle on itself. Of course, there is hint throughout the environment. For instance, when you aim at the platform, it glows and there is some kind of feedback telling you it's interactable. Also, the environment is kind of limited and concise, making the puzzle easier to solve. And so, why this mechanic? First, it is to help the player navigate throughout the environment. Second, later in the game, you will have to position platform in the right way to be able to solve puzzle. The other question is why you can't interact with them during their patrol. Simply because it would create way more possibilities. And obviously in puzzle games, the more possibilities you have, the harder are the puzzle. And at the same time, it would be easier to break the puzzle. So for both the player and the developer, it was wiser to do this way. And now you acquire your second power. Now you can see that the crosshair logic is similar to Portal. The right part is linked to the right click, and the left part is linked to the left click. For instance, now if you want to use the red power, you have to use the right click. You enter the room and you see some kind of bouncy ball. It is an hint, and it is to show you that the red properties create some kind of a trampoline effect. Don't worry, that this mechanic will be way more complicated later on. But for now, it is just a trampoline, and it is to create some kind of dynamic for the first puzzle. And so, now you have access to the third power, the yellow one. The third power creates some kind of laser bridge coming from two faces of the platform. If you click against, the laser will be deactivated, and another one will be created coming from the two other faces of the platform, and so forth and so forth. You can walk on these lasers, but they will also have other effects later on the games. And obviously, as you can see, the room is designed so that you can see and experiment the change of direction of the laser. Okay, now the player has tried the three different abilities, so it is time to give him a break and give him some kind of a reward in the form of a small cinematic. The player has now all his abilities in his disposition. As you can see, he can switch between the red one and the yellow one with the mouse wheel. The blue one is always available with the left click. This puzzle is necessary for many reasons. First, it is a challenge progression, meaning that this puzzle is way harder than the one before. It is also to show to the player the way to change weapon, which is necessary to complete this level. Finally, it is also to teach the player that he can use more than one abilities on the same platform to solve puzzle. For instance, the first platform you have to give him the blue property to raise it, and also the yellow one to create a bridge to the exit. After that, you have to give the blue property to position the platform at the right place, and after that, you have to give it the red property to bounce on it and reach the exit. This puzzle is even harder because it involves two steps. Step 1. The player has to use the red properties to create a trampoline effect to reach the top of the cube. Step 2. The player has to use the yellow properties to create a bridge going under the cube and reaching the exit. As you can see, there is a red platform behind the glass. When the glass falls out, you can see that the laser touch it and multiply. This is pretty subtle and maybe people won't even notice. Nonetheless, it is still an hint for one of the main features of the games. So, here's the control device. The control device can have multiple effects. It can change the position of some wall, it can deactivate some wall, or different aspects of the environment. There is basically two types of device. One which is activated just once, another which has multiple options that you that you can choose between. While these two types were basically the same, they have a very different logic in terms of puzzle. The first type, the one that you can activate just once, asks the player to reach a certain objective to be able to complete the level. The second one, the one with many options, asks the player to think about the different options and how they affect the environment. The puzzle is pretty simple. The device just has one option, and once it's activated, the door is open and the player can continue. Now it's time to introduce the laser switch. The laser switch can be activated by a laser coming from a yellow platform. Like the control device, they can have multiple effects, such as a moving wall or a deactivating wall. There are two main reasons for this mechanic. First, it gives another purpose to the yellow platform and the yellow laser, Instead of just walking on it, the laser have the effect of activating things. The other reason is that there can be only one yellow platform at the same time. If you create another yellow platform, the first platform becomes neutral again, meaning that the players sometimes have to be a little more strategic and thinkful about the way you use the laser to be able to complete the level. The level is designed so that you have no choice but to try the mechanic of the laser switch. What I mean by that is that the platform is at a certain height, so you cannot reach it. So the blue or the red property are pretty useless, which means that you will have eventually try the yellow property and create a laser. When you create a laser, it hits the laser switch and the platform move. The platform is also pretty well in evidence. So even though you might not understand it at first, if you try and if you're curious, you will see the reaction and the effect, and you will end up understanding the mechanic by itself. So, in this puzzle, you learn a little more about the red property effect. Earlier you realized that it creates some kind of trampoline effect, but now you understand that after a certain height, the rebounds effect is proportional to the fall. The fact that the bounce become proportional after a certain height creates a little more depth and possibilities to the red property. It also creates a little more dynamic and vertiginous effect to the games. This puzzle introduced the blue barrier. The blue barrier blocks the player, but you can still shoot through it. At the same time, it is also a reminder of how the laser switch works, which will be useful for the next puzzle. Now here is the introduction of one of the main mechanics of the games, which is the laser multiplication. When a laser touches a red platform, it multiplies by its two perpendicular faces. Since there can be only one laser origin, it is an interesting way to create very complex and interesting laser path. It is also an interesting way to give another purpose to the red property. To add to this mechanic, when two lasers hit each other, it breaks the whole sequence. This way, you can create more depth and challenge to some puzzle. For this puzzle, I cheated my own rules. Until this point, the player has to understand by himself all the mechanics and how they work. But since this mechanics is way more complex to learn, I tried to be a little more obvious. For instance, when the player enters the room, he has some kind of cinematic telling you how things work in a very direct manner. To add to that, there is a graph on the wall and text telling you how things work in a very obvious way. I also disabled the blue property so that the player has less option and be less confused. So now, you pass through a green barrier and you enter the room. The green barrier works